let's start off giving us a little bit about your history with TCGs.
Yeah, so I mean, as everybody else, as a little kid, I got introduced to the shows, and it's just like, look at these flashy cards. It's what's in. It's the trend. I need to have that. I need to have that base set Charizard, to be able to flaunt that at elementary school. So pretty much joined that bandwagon of Pokemon. That was my first TCG. More of a collectible kind of aspect to it, not so much the competitive. Although I do remember seeing the commercials about the gym kind of challenges, and you could get like actual
Yes.
badges. I was just like, oh my God, I want to do that so bad. But, for whatever reason, my parents were like, no, you're not doing that. So I'm just like, all right, whatever. I do remember, I want to say even to a point where like my local dollar store at the time, I was living in Houston at the time, had Pokemon cards, and me obviously being oblivious to the whole aspect of like, almost like fake cards and so forth. They had packs for $1. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna get this pack for $1, and I'm gonna pack a Charizard. I'm pretty sure they were fake, 100%. But I was all happy, like, as a little kid with my little like, foil cards, even though it says like Needle Stomp instead of Needle Queen or something, like really bizarre. But pretty much after that, it just came to the transition to Yu-Gi-Oh! So then Yu-Gi-Oh came part of my life, obviously because of the show. We're all kind of fond of that. And then on that aspect, I did get a little bit more competitive when I was a little kid, just kind of like, getting a little decks just here and there. But it wasn't until high school where I actually, just wanted to make some friends, go into the local, card shop, and I made some wonderful, wonderful friends. And from there, it just kind of transitioned. So I think I started off, and this is funny. So at that point, I had like a random collection of things, and I remember my friends helped me build a Machina deck. I think that was what it was, and then eventually it transcended into okay, let me get a little bit more competitive because it's just kind of playing for fun. Eventually, it became to Light Sworns, and then it became a Six Samurai deck, and then that's where like I ended up going to regionals here in San Antonio, and I actually played Six Samurais when gateways were like you got to run it. It
Yeah.
was the deck to play. So I mean, I think I did top. It was a long time ago because I remember I was in the top table, but at the end I didn't place like first or second. I think it was like top 16 or something of that sort. But I was pretty happy. I was like, wow, this is great. Love the experience. And then from there, it kind of died down a little bit, focused more on school. And then eventually up to, I think it was, let me see, last year, around this time actually, is where I started to see some um, little advertisements about Digimon. And I think at that point I was like, wow, that's cool. A card game. It's like whatever, it's probably gonna fail as the other five Digimon card games that were out there. So I didn't really pay too much attention. But then eventually, I think around like May of last year, it was almost on that whole like, you know what? I need a hobby. COVID is just like the worst. I need to find something to kind of like, gear me up and just kind of motivate me. So eventually, I inquired a little bit. I just kind of like scouted a little bit of information, did some research, and then all right, turns out there's some local shops here too. So I eventually just went to one of my local shops, Geeked Out. Shout out to them. And yeah, they were really friendly. Like, yeah, cool. What do you want to build? What's your play style? I had no recollection, like nothing. I just saw a couple of videos. And then eventually it was like, well, there's so many colors, there's so many themes, so many like aspects of Digimon. It just depends really what you want to run and maybe who's your favorite Digimon. You can kind of run around like a deck like that. So I was like, I like competitive. I like to go all in. So tell me the deck that's like the most tiered, awesome. It wins. It doesn't matter if it's super complicated. I just want to get in and just win. They're like, all right, blue hybrids at the time. I was like, okay, cool. Didn't know nothing about it. So I went in, did the blue hybrids, misplayed a lot. I mean, I'm talking about I didn't know so much about the game that I remember. I think the second local tournament that I did, I didn't know really much about the interactions of cards because I lacked that vision, just kind of like seeing what other players
Yeah.
played. So I remember in the finals, I did go to the finals against a good friend, and then I went first. And tell me why I played. Um, what did I do specifically? I think I played triple Hammer Spark just to be able to play a tamer to choke my opponent to one on the first turn. And I remember there was people around us and they were just like, what is he doing? And like, it's the first turn. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I'm just like, I ended up winning. So strategy there, throw off your opponent with weird play so that way they don't think anything of you. And they'll be like, oh yeah, he doesn't know. He's newbie. And then bam, go in with the big sword and just, win. But it was funny. So ever since then, Digimon has been my play.
What was your opponent playing at that game?
Beelstar.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of options, a lot of things, and I didn't know that much. So I just like play, my hybrids there, and pretty much they get blown up or whatever. It's like, okay, cool. And I play like a niche, like a Nemon, so tamers would come back, and it's just like, okay, cool. I have a lot of other things going on, and then Tommy was at 3, so it was amazing.
Yeah. Well, Tommy against Billstar. Yeah. So with that, you said you previously did Yu-Gi-Oh and whatnot. For Pokemon, did you ever get that Charizard, that base set one?
Oh, absolutely. I have it somewhere in my closet, actually. It's not the one that I had as a childhood, but actually I acquired this base set Charizard, I want to say about 5 years ago. And I got a really good deal for it. And I was like, all right, you know what? I've always wanted this card. And I was like, let's go for it. And I have it in the case and everything. And sure enough, it's just there. There's my base set Charizard. I could put that out on my checklist.
So when you were in Yu-Gi-Oh, aside from that one regional you were talking about, did you ever do anything else with it, or just kind of?
No, actually, no. I think at that point because I was still in school. I think even like to a point I was in high school and just kind of, beginning of college. I was a little bit more focused on, school, and this was more as a pastime, like really casual, non-competitive. But once I kind of like got a little bit into Yu-Gi-Oh, it was just like, all right, let's try a regional. Why not? But I just stopped there. I didn't go any further or didn't anything else of that sort.
Now coming into Digimon, did you think that you would kind of see yourself playing in big tournaments, or what led you to TCG Con?
Yeah, so I think for that aspect of life, I guess you could say, is I have done some regionals. I have done a couple things. I have topped in a couple of things, but not too like drastic of a top, like, top 16 or top 8. But, I think going into Digimon itself, I had that, competitive mindset. And I was like, you know what? It'd be great if I can top into one of these events and just kind of like do something of that sort. So I remember actually one of my friends, Andrew, we were playing against each other at locals, and he was just like, so what are you doing in a couple of weeks? And I was like, I mean, probably nothing, aside from just some regular stuff. He's like, you want to go to Houston for a tournament? I was like, okay, maybe I'll let you know. And he's like, well, is this a yes or a no? I'm like, all right, let's go. So eventually, that was kind of like the thing. I didn't know specifically that it was, like this TCG Con, but I was just like, all right, cool, let's do it. Why not? And then eventually, we just kind of prepared and we just went. I got off of work on Friday, and then we just kind of drove with some friends.
And this is Andrew, Andrew, right?
Yes, our Andrew.
Okay, okay. So now, how do you feel that you've won this? You've kind of reached this point where you've had some success, you've done good locally, now you're first place at TCG Con.
It's funny because I'm a big extrovert. I will talk to people. I will not hesitate to, initiate a conversation, just kind of talk. But there is a little part of me that is an introvert. I'm gonna say like I'm an ambivert for that matter. And when I came back, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do a little like free tournament in your name for the
I
champion and
saw
everything."
that.
I was like, "Oh, that's so embarrassing," and just I don't know. It's kind of weird for me on that concept. And then when I got to locals, they're like, "Oh, make way for the champ." I was like, "No, don't say that." I was just like, "No. Oh, I'm going up against the champ." No, don't say that. It's just funny. I just like to play. I mean, I enjoy the game and so forth. If we win, that's great, and winning these kind of events, it's obviously an experience. I think more than anything, if I were to say what was kind of like my favorite part of the TCG Con, it wasn't actually winning. Believe it or not, I think it was more of the interaction that I had with other players. And the reason why is because I met some wonderful people, some really humble people, some really amazing people that I mean, I'm just a stranger there, and we just interacted like if we knew each other for a while, and we were just chilling and just talking, and it was just a great time. So I always appreciate those moments, in events like these where you're able to kind of interact, just kind of know where everyone's from, and just kind of like seeing what other players are. So that's a great part about it. I think that
Yeah.
was the highlight of that TCG Con.
I haven't been to any big Digimon tournaments, but during my Yu-Gi-Oh days, I've gone to a few, and that was probably my favorite there. As competitive as it is, you would think that you'd run into people who just aren't like the friendliest. But during games, we're chatting, we're having fun, we're laughing. As you get towards the top tables, it gets a little more serious, but there's still that casual conversation aspect of it, which I loved. And when I finally do decide to go to bigger events going forward, I hope it will be the same thing, which your experience kind of reminds me that maybe it is.
Yeah, yeah. I think I even met a couple of YouTubers for that matter,
Okay.
and they were really nice. They were friendly, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, hey, I run a YouTube channel. Is it okay if I film your, your your match?" And I'm just like, "Oh, they're gonna see all the misplays, and you're gonna be like, what is this guy doing?" and so forth. But they were really, really friendly, and they're just like, "Ah, don't worry about it." And it's just casual. And then eventually we did like a little deck list video, and that was fun. It's just kind of like I said, those interactions are really what are the biggest treasure for me.
That's pretty cool. I did so when doing these. I do research on the deck profiles and videos that come out about that player prior to. I want to make sure I'm not asking some of the same questions. My thought process behind that is you could only see the same deck profile on Metal Guru or Wargreymon so many times before it's just repetitive content. But one thing that I believe I glimpsed but didn't get to watch was someone did post some gameplay of yours, right?
Yeah, someone actually put the final match, and it was actually a mirror match against another
Wargreymon.
war. Yeah, another war
Who
gray.
was that? I know I kind of just saw Primitive Kage's deck profile, but was he also the one who did the gameplay?
Yes, he did the gameplay for both the deck profile and the finals match. My opponent, I unfortunately don't know, or sorry if I don't remember your name. But we just kind of like it was funny. He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm kind of like X1, and I'm just here, and I'm just having fun and so forth." I was like, "All right, cool." But again, I think I was also really nervous. I'm like, "Oh, what am I doing in this table?"
And headed towards that table through the day, did you see much Metal Guru, or what was the overall matchups that you saw?
Yeah, so most of my matchups were pretty like kind of like different all over the place. So I did have two middle gurus. I did have a Justmon. I did have a Dorbrickmon. I did have two security controls, and then I think the rest were the Wargreymons. So I
Yeah,
mean, and just kind of like a little bit of a experience from previous matches and so forth at locals where that kind of allowed me to kind of know more or less the matches, just kind of like the strategies of like, okay, when are you pulling the trigger, when are you going in for the kill, and how can I kind of like play around that for sure.
what was the matchup that caught you off guard?
Oh, that Dorbrickmon.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I remember I was like, all right, cool. I had to play really strategically against it because I noticed. So I like to believe that I kind of adapt quickly. And if the first round I notice some patterns, I'll be like, okay, cool. I'm never going to do that again. That was horrible. But I think it was like turn two. He just like hard plays that for cost of three and just smacks me for all my securities pretty much. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm never going to give you three ever again. I'm just going to choke you. And I remember, I think at that point, what ended up happening was on the second round, I win that one. So I won that one. And then the third one, I was like, all right, I'm not going to choke you. I'm just gonna try to like maybe kind of like maybe see where you're planning to go on this if I give you like the three or so forth because I was kind of seeing what he was drawing and so forth based on his like searchers and everything. And then eventually I was like, all right, I'm gonna choke you to one because I'm gonna go for the kill. I put him to one. I put a rookie on the field because they needed to search. And I think what ended up happening was he puts Dorbrick the Dorbic, and then he has two inheritables that you gain a memory when you delete something. So it actually goes back to his turn. So it would go for it would pass to my turn, and then he would gain two more. So realistically, it's back to his turn. I was like, oh my god, no! I played that rookie, and that's going to be my demise. I'm going to lose. And then eventually, I think what happened was he swung into security, and thankfully he played. I mean, he ran into my Omni X, which is 16K, so he couldn't get over that. So that destroy that, and that saved my life because then eventually, like next turn, I was like, all right, cool, here I am going for the kill.
What round was that?
That was, I believe, round 2.
Okay, so that was. Oh, this is really early on.
Early on, yeah. My first round was against Metal Gururu, actually. And that player, props to him. He was so good and meticulous about his plays. And I was just like, oh my God, I have gone a bit up against my fair share. It's always a 50-50 with the Melgas, but definitely I was able to kind of play into, winning on that one. But then that second round, that was where I was just like, oh, this is a good deck. Oh my God, this is horrible.
Cool. So, when just kind of getting a little know more about you. So, what's your favorite Digimon?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I would say that, coming into the game, I didn't really have a specific Digimon that I would love for, say, like, oh my God, this is my childhood favorite. But I did love the whole aspect of the Royal Knights and so forth. So I ended up having a kind of like a favoritism for Alphamon. So I ended up obviously running that deck, and I loved it for the longest time. And then it got hit for a little bit, and then just like, all right, so we're waiting for that revamp soon. But I was fortunate enough to actually trade in for a golden Alphamon, that secret one that
Yeah.
everyone, that expensive one. So I was able to get that one, and I was like, all right, and this solidifies that I love Alphamon. This is probably my favorite Digimon now.
Uh, so what about Yu-Gi-Oh? Favorite Yu-Gi-Oh card?
Ooh, favorite Yu-Gi-Oh card. So, I would say I was really, really, really fond of the Six Samurai, decks and so forth. So I think Grandmaster was the top dog for me. He was just like, all right, in his pose and everything. Like, I kind of run the show here. It was great. I love that card so much.
It's really interesting seeing kind of like that older art for Yu-Gi-Oh and the newer art, and just there isn't a big difference, but there are just some of those cards back then that really stood out, and Grandmaster was one of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So give us a kind of a geeky or weeby fact about you.
Ooh, well, you know how maybe like, people say they have skeletons in their closet and so forth. I actually have all my collection of all my collectibles, figures, and everything in my closet because they don't fit in my, living room. So I think the geekiest part about me is I'm really big into nostalgic things like PS1 and all kind of like, collectibles from back in the 90s and so forth. So my closet is actually full with those kind of aspects of things, like anything that reminds me of my childhood. So PS1 games, I have my collectibles from the 90s, like figures. Like I even have Digimon figures from the 90s, which is great. I have a couple of things. I love Overwatch as well. This statue right here on the background, this is my coffee bar that I
Okay.
usually use every day. But this one here is actually there because I didn't have space over there in my living room, so I just had to put it there. But I think if anything, the geekiest thing about me is the fact that I don't hesitate to um, be shy to tell people about what I like. So my coworkers, they all know that I play Digimon and that I do all these things, and they actually support it, which is great. I think more than anything, I think speaking personally, back in elementary or middle school, one would kind of hide the fact that we would love anime and like
Yeah.
all like video games just to kind of not be like that nerdy geeky kid. But nowadays it's kind of what's trendy, and you could tell people about it, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I know about that." I mean, things like Pokemon Go kind of elaborated, just allowed people to kind of be a little bit more immersive into that world. And now, like I said, my coworkers were even like, "Oh." I told them, "Oh yeah, I won this, TCG Con." They're like, "Cool, is there a video? We want to see it." And then the deck profile video came out, and they're like, "Ah, we want to see it. We want to see it." And they saw it, then they're like, "We have no," well, pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
They're like, "We have no idea what's going on, but you look great." And we support you. And I was like, yes, coworker support. But yeah,
That's always
that's
pretty
kind of
cool.
like the thing.
All right. So, you know your deck list kind of by memory, or I have your deck list pulled up, but I wanted to go over a little bit, few things on there.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of do remember my deck. I think I play Wargreymon, but you can correct me if I'm wrong.
And then me being the silly goose, uh, I definitely lost your deck list. I pulled up another. So let me go ahead and go find that right quick.